I woke up to my phone vibrating. A message from my friend, "Have you seen this?" I opened the link and saw the video, my fiancé in another man's arms, laughing, whispering, "After the wedding, I'll divorce him, and half of his money will be mine." I met Jessica at a fundraiser for the Boston Children's Hospital 3 years ago. She was volunteering, helping coordinate the silent auction with an efficiency that caught my attention. I donated significantly that year after my software company's IPO, and the hospital staff made sure I was treated like royalty. But Jessica was different. She didn't fawn over my wallet or position. She spoke to me like a regular person, teased me about my terrible handwriting on the donation card, and made me laugh for the first time in months. We exchanged numbers that night, and I found myself texting her the very next day. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Cambridge. She wore a simple blue dress and ordered the cheapest wine on the menu without a second thought. When I insisted on paying, she seemed genuinely uncomfortable and promised to get the next one. "Most men I meet are intimidated by a woman who wants to pay her own way," she said, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "I'm not most men," I replied, and she smiled in a way that made my chest tighten. For our second date, she surprised me with tickets to a Red Sox game. Not the luxury box seats I was accustomed to, but regular seats in the crowd. We ate overpriced hot dogs, cheered with strangers, and got soaked in an unexpected summer downpour. It was the most normal I'd felt since my company went public. Jessica seemed perfect. Intelligent but humble, ambitious but kind. She worked as a pediatric nurse, and the way she spoke about her patients, with such genuine concern, made me believe I'd found someone truly special. Someone who cared about more than just money and status. Over the next 2 years, our relationship deepened. I introduced her to my business partners, my friends, even my skeptical mother who had warned me about gold diggers since the day our company valuation hit 9 figures. Mom was instantly charmed by Jessica's apparent sincerity and the homemade apple pie she brought to Sunday dinner. "She's different," Mom said later, squeezing my arm. "I think she really loves you, Michael." I believed it too. When Jessica moved into my Beacon Hill townhouse, she insisted on contributing to the household expenses, even though her nurse's salary was a fraction of my income. She kept her modest car instead of accepting my offer to buy her something more luxurious. She continued working her hospital shifts, often coming home exhausted but fulfilled. "I don't need your money, Michael," she would say whenever I suggested she could work less. "I love what I do, and I love you for who you are, not what you have." It was exactly what I needed to hear after my previous relationship had ended when I discovered my ex was more interested in my bank account than my company. Jessica seemed like the antidote to my cynicism, the proof that genuine connections were still possible despite my wealth. I proposed on our second anniversary. We were in Napa Valley, watching the sunset from a private vineyard terrace. When I pulled out the ring, a modest 2-carat diamond because Jessica had once mentioned she'd be embarrassed by anything flashier, tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The wedding planning began immediately. Jessica surprised me by wanting a large, elaborate ceremony. "I've been dreaming of my wedding day since I was a little girl," she explained, showing me Pinterest boards filled with extravagant floral arrangements and designer gowns. "Is it okay if we go a little over the top just this once?" How could I say no? I wanted to give her everything. We booked the Boston Public Library for the reception, hired a renowned chef for the catering, and Jessica chose a custom Vera Wang gown. The budget kept expanding, but I didn't mind. Seeing her excitement as each detail came together made every expense worthwhile. We decided to buy a house before the wedding, a Georgian colonial in Brookline with enough bedrooms for the family we both wanted to start. I paid cash, but insisted on putting the deed in both our names. "I want you to feel secure," I told her. "What's mine is yours." Her eyes glistened with tears. "You're too good to me," she said, kissing me softly. Everything was perfect. Our wedding was 3 weeks away. The invitations had been sent, the final fittings completed, the honeymoon to the Maldives booked. Everyone said I was the luckiest man in Boston. Then came the text that changed everything. It was from Marcus, my college roommate and now CFO of my company. We'd been through everything together, the ramen noodle days of our startup, the all-nighters coding in our cramped apartment, the disbelief when our first major client signed on. He was the brother I never had, the one person I trusted implicitly. "You need to see this," the message read, followed by a video attachment. "I'm sorry, man." I was in my office when I opened it, expecting perhaps a bachelor party prank or maybe some embarrassing footage of me from our college days. Instead, I saw Jessica. She was at what looked like a hotel bar, sitting close to a man I didn't recognize. Too close. Her hand was on his thigh, her lips near his ear. They were laughing about something. I turned up the volume, my stomach already knotting with dread. "He has no idea," Jessica was saying, her voice slightly slurred but unmistakable. "He's so trusting, it's almost too easy." The man said something inaudible, and Jessica laughed again, a sound I'd always found melodious but now seemed harsh and cruel. "After the wedding, I'll divorce him, and half of his money will be mine," she said, clear as day. "The prenup his lawyer suggested? I convinced him we didn't need it because our love was too pure for paperwork." She made air quotes and rolled her eyes. "Can you believe he fell for that?" They clinked glasses and Jessica leaned in for a kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The video ended, and I sat motionless, my world collapsing around me. I played it again. And again. 5 times in total, hoping desperately that I'd somehow misunderstood, that there was an explanation that wouldn't destroy the future I'd been building. There wasn't. I called Marcus immediately. "Where did you get this?" My voice was surprisingly steady. "Tyler's bachelor party was at the Four Seasons last weekend. Jessica didn't know he's friends with me. He recognized her, saw what was happening, and started recording. He sent it to me this morning, wasn't sure what to do." Marcus paused. "I'm so sorry, Michael." I thanked him for his honesty and hung up. Then I sat in silence for nearly an hour, processing, planning. I could confront her immediately, throw her out, cancel the wedding. It would be the obvious response, the expected one. But as the initial shock faded, something colder and more calculating took its place. Jessica had played me for a fool, had spent years constructing an elaborate lie. She deserved more than just a confrontation. She deserved a reckoning. When I returned home that evening, Jessica was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as she often did. She greeted me with a kiss and a glass of wine. "Rough day?" she asked, noticing my subdued demeanor. "Just tired," I replied, studying her face, the face I'd loved and trusted. She showed no sign of guilt, no hint of the betrayal I'd witnessed. Her performance was flawless. "The florist called," she continued, stirring the pasta sauce. "The peonies for the centerpieces might not be available. I told them white roses would be an acceptable substitute. I hope that's okay. Whatever makes you happy, Jess." I smiled, matching her performance with one of my own. "It's your perfect day, after all." She beamed at me, and I wondered how I'd never noticed the calculation behind those warm brown eyes. Over dinner, she chattered about wedding details and honeymoon plans. I nodded in all the right places, asked appropriate questions, even suggested we upgrade our honeymoon suite to the overwater villa she'd been eyeing in the brochure. "Really?" she exclaimed. "But it's so much more expensive." "You're worth it," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "To us, and our future together." She clinked her glass against mine, unaware that the future she envisioned was already crumbling beneath her feet. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years and began implementing my plan. My first stop was my lawyer's office. Richard had been handling my legal affairs since before the IPO. He'd suggested a prenuptial agreement months ago, and had been visibly concerned when I told him Jessica and I had decided against it. Things have changed, I told him now, playing the video on my phone. Richard watched in silence, his expression hardening. When it ended, he looked up at me with new respect. "What do you want to do?" "I want to give her exactly the wedding she's dreaming of," I replied. "And then I want to make sure she walks away with exactly what she deserves." Over the next week, I worked closely with Richard and his team. We reviewed all the wedding contracts, the house deed, our joint accounts. We developed a strategy that would protect my assets while allowing the wedding preparations to continue undisturbed. I also hired a private investigator who quickly discovered that Jessica's work shifts often coincided with meetings at various hotels with the man from the video. His name was David Langley, and he wasn't just her lover, he was her ex-boyfriend from before we met. They'd apparently been planning this con for years. The PI also uncovered disturbing information about Jessica's past. Her real name was Jennifer Winters. She'd changed it after being investigated for similar schemes in Chicago and Miami. She had no nursing degree, though she had worked as a hospital administrative assistant at one point, which explained her knowledge of medical terminology. The friends who had vouched for her character when we first dated were paid actors. My entire relationship had been an elaborate fraud. As the wedding day approached, I maintained my facade of the devoted, unsuspecting fiancé. I attended the rehearsal dinner, smiled through the toasts, and held Jessica's hand as our friends and family celebrated our love. Jessica's parents, or rather, the couple playing that role, gave a tearful speech about welcoming me to their family. I wondered how much they were being paid, and whether they felt any remorse for their part in the deception. The night before the wedding, Jessica stayed at a hotel with her bridesmaids, as per tradition. I received a sweet text before bed, "Can't wait to be your wife tomorrow. You've made all my dreams come true. Love you always, Jay." I didn't reply. I was too busy with final preparations of my own. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. The Boston Public Library had been transformed into a floral wonderland, just as Jessica had envisioned. 300 guests arrived, admiring the extravagant decorations and commenting on the obvious expense. I stood at the altar, wearing the custom Tom Ford tuxedo Jessica had selected, while the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. My groomsmen, Marcus among them, stood beside me, all aware of what was about to happen. The music changed, and Jessica appeared at the end of the aisle. She was radiant in her Vera Wang gown, her face glowing with triumph barely disguised as bridal joy. As she walked toward me, I had to admire her commitment to the role. If I hadn't seen the video, I might still believe she was the woman of my dreams. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love, trust, and honesty, words that hung in the air like accusations. Jessica's eyes misted with tears at all the right moments. She was giving the performance of her life. Then came the vows. Jessica went first, her voice trembling with well-practiced emotion as she promised to love, honor, and cherish me for all our days. The guests sighed appreciatively at her heartfelt words. When it was my turn, I reached into my pocket and pulled out not the vows I'd prepared, but my phone. "Jessica," I began, "before I make my vows, I'd like to share something with everyone." Confusion flickered across her face, but her smile remained fixed. "Of course, honey." I nodded to Marcus, who approached with a small remote. The library's projection system, installed for the photo montage that was supposed to play during the reception, hummed to life. A screen descended behind the altar. "This is a special video I think our guests should see," I said, my voice carrying through the now silent room. I pressed play. Jessica's face on the screen, her voice crystal clear, "After the wedding, I'll divorce him, and half of his money will be mine." The crowd gasped collectively. Jessica froze beside me, her bouquet slipping from suddenly nerveless fingers. I let the video play in its entirety. Every damning word, every calculated laugh, every moment of betrayal exposed before our friends, family, and colleagues. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Jessica's face had drained of all color. "Michael," she whispered, reaching for my arm. "I can explain. It's not what it looks like." I stepped away from her touch. "It's exactly what it looks like, Jennifer." I emphasized her real name, watching her flinch. "Or should I call you by one of your other aliases? Lisa Martinez from Chicago? Melissa Cooper from Miami?" Murmurs spread through the crowd as I continued, my voice steady and clear. "You've been planning this for 3 years. You and David Langley." I gestured to the back of the room, where the PI had escorted David in, his hands cuffed. "Unfortunately for both of you, fraud across state lines is a federal offense." Jennifer, looked wildly around the room, perhaps searching for escape, perhaps looking for someone to back up her denials. She found only shocked faces and accusing stares. "This isn't happening," she said, more to herself than to me. "You can't prove anything." "I have 3 years of evidence," I replied calmly. "Bank records, false identification, witness statements from your previous targets. The FBI has been quite thorough." On cue, 2 agents stepped forward from among the guests. They'd been posing as distant relatives, monitoring the situation at my request. "You can keep the dress," I told her as the agents approached. "But there won't be a husband to go with it." I turned to our stunned audience. "I apologize for the unconventional ceremony. There will still be a reception, I've paid for it, after all, but I won't be attending. The open bar will remain open, and the food is excellent. Please, enjoy the rest of your afternoon." With that, I walked down the aisle and out of the library, ignoring the chaos erupting behind me. Outside, a car was waiting to take me to the airport. Not for the honeymoon I'd planned, but for a solitary retreat where I could begin to process the betrayal and its aftermath. As the car pulled away, I glanced back at the library steps. Jessica was being escorted out by the FBI agents, her beautiful gown incongruous with the circumstances. Our eyes met for a brief moment. There was no remorse in hers, only fury at being caught. I turned away, facing forward. The wedding I'd dreamed of had become a very different kind of ceremony, not the beginning of a life together, but the end of an elaborate lie. And although the truth had been painful, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that justice, like a patient bridegroom, had been waiting all along.